Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be replacing the rear brake pads on a 2016 BMW 740i. We'll be going over all the tools and parts you will need. Everything will be linked down in the description below. First thing I did was lift the vehicle. I have my jack stand on the lifting point, and I used a jack just a little to the left, so I have space to place the jack. These are 17mm lug bolts. Remove them all. On the last one, put some force with your hand because it might want to fall down on you. If the wheel is stuck on and you're pulling and pulling and it won't come off, grab one of the lug bolts. You're going to start the threads a little bit. Just give it like 2-3 turns. You don't want it all the way down. You just want it just a few threads. I'll show you how we're going to release the wheel. On the inside, you're going to find the lower control arm here. With a pry bar, you're going to come in on the lower control arm and you're going to put force going down. That will allow you to remove the wheel easily. Just like that. Now it gets stuck because there's always a lot of buildup right here. So you want to clean this off before you put the wheel back on. We'll get to that later. Only the rear right is going to have a brake pad sensor. You'll see it right in here. It's going to plug into the inner brake pad. You can see that it is already touching the rotor. That lets us know that the brake pad is at 3mm or less. And the sensor comes up, wraps around over here, comes out over there, and into a little service box right up here. So now that we know we need brake pads, the rotors also have a minimum thickness. You'll find that stamped on the rotor itself. You might need to clean it off a little bit, but it usually says right here, MINTH for minimum thickness, and you'll see 22.4 millimeters. That is the minimum thickness allowed for brake pad replacement. So now we need to measure the rotor. We're going to use a tool like this to measure the rotor. Again, everything I use, most of it will be linked down in the description below, so you can grab these tools, and most of them are from Amazon, so they're easily accessible. So the way this tool works is when the clamps are closed, you're reading 0mm, and as you open the clamps, it tells you the measurement in millimeters. So we're going to put this point on the back side of the rotor and this point on the front side of the rotor. So you'll place the tool like this, and you want to make sure that this is flat with the rotor. And this is what I mean. Flat up against the rotor like this, so you don't want to be one side too heavy or too low. And you'll find it where it wants to sit. Keep good pressure, bring it in as close to the rotor as possible, and then with the other side you slide it in till you make contact. You're not forcing, it's just as soon as it makes contact, you'll read what the gauge says. So this is coming in at 23.97 millimeters, so we are well above the minimum mark, and these rotors are safe to reuse. Measuring the right side is a little difficult because this backing plate doesn't allow you to go in. You have to go in the same spot as the other side, but when you do that, the tool's upside down and you kind of need to get under it in order to read it. And if you don't want to do that, it has a hold feature right here, this button. So what I like to do is I will bring in my tool in position, bring it across, and I'm going to hit the hold button. And now even if I open it, I keep my measurement. See that? And I measured at 24.02, which is pretty much the same. So if you end up needing rotors and you purchase some, just make sure there is a left and a right rotor. Sometimes they're not the same. And you'll be able to tell by a little indicator on the rotor. It'll say L for left side or R for right side with an arrow indicating the point of direction. So if you have an R and we're on the right side, the R would be here and there'd be an arrow pointing that way. I'm gonna start on the right side with the brake pad sensor. The left side is going to be identical to what we do here. The only difference is there will not be a brake pad sensor on the left side. On the back side of the caliper, you're going to find a 13mm screw. There's also another one down there. And then you're gonna find a 17mm nut right here. And this is where you're going to have to counter hold support in order to remove this 13mm. So to remove it at first, I don't use any counter support because I'm just trying to break this part loose. So we'll loosen this first, and then see how this is spinning now? You can keep spinning this and it'll never loosen up. So you need a small skinny wrench, 17mm, to counter hold here so you can loosen the nut. So you can loosen the screw here. And the same thing needs to be done on the one on the bottom. You want to have the bottom one loosened by hand first before you remove completely the bolt, the 13 on top. Otherwise, if you go to try to remove the 13, what's going to happen is the caliper's going to want to come out, and it's going to be hard to leverage it out because there's nothing holding it on the top side. So now we're going to remove the brake pad sensor. You're going to follow it, and it's going to be on hangers all along until it gets to the service box. So right here, this is a little hanger. To make it easier on yourself, because they are going to be stuck, spray a little bit of WD-40 on each of the hangers. So when you go to remove them, it's a lot easier. This is the sensor, this little brake pad sensor right here. See this little copper right here is a wire on the inside of the sensor that as you're driving gets exposed, starts making contact with the rotor, and that sends the signal to your computer to let you know that the brake pads have come to the minimum mark and they need to be replaced. Now right here, there's a 10mm plastic nut you need to remove, which will give us access to the service box. On the bottom, you're gonna have two locking tabs that you can easily undo with a hook or a pick. You're gonna follow the wire, pull out the connector for the brake pad sensor, which is going to be this blue one. And you're gonna find a little locking tab right here to undo by hand. You're gonna push down on it and pull it apart. They will be stuck if you have a lot of dirt and debris in here. So if it's really, really difficult, with your same pick, you can come in here and very carefully, because if you go too much, you can break this. You'll very carefully come under the clip here, pry it open, and then separate the two. And even then, it might be hard. There you go. And now you got them separated. And this whole wire is going to be trash. And we will replace it Now you can grab the caliper and wiggle it out. Once it comes off, careful because this is kind of heavy. We're going to rotate it and sit it on top of the control arm up here. Now don't ever let the caliper hang down with all of its weight pulling on a brake line. You can rupture it, damage it, and your braking system will be compromised. Always rest it somewhere. Never let this stretch and pull down on it. Now your brake pads, you're just going to lever them out, pull them out of their slots. Like this. This little decorative strip right here, that the BMW logo, don't remove this. Per the BMW instructions, if you remove this, it needs to be replaced because the retaining clip is compromised. So just don't remove it. There is a unlocking tab on the back side to loosen it up and take it out, but as you saw, you don't need to do it to remove the brake pad. So it's best to just leave this here. And on the back side, there's no decorative strip, so this can easily just come off. Now, I'm not going to replace the rotors on this car because they are okay, but if you need to replace your rotors, you also need to remove this bracket. The caliper bracket is held on by two E16 screws. You're going to need an E16 socket. That's going to be the inverted star. And here's what they look like. So you'll get your socket right in here. Loosen up both of those. Now this bolt is on pretty tight. You're looking at about 130 Newton meters, so make sure you have a torque wrench that can tighten it down that much. Also keep in mind of your space that you have here. You don't have much space. What I usually do is get an extension from here to come out here, and I'll work in this area right here, because trying to work on it right here is really tight, but it is best because this is where you're going to have the most leverage. Whenever you attach an extension, you lose leverage. So make sure that you have a torque wrench big enough to tighten this back down, and also a breaker bar big enough to be able to loosen this up. Once you loosen up those two E16s, this bracket will come right off. They're never stuck on, so they should just fall right off. So be careful with that once you get the last bolt off. And then the only thing you need to do after that is remove this little holding screw. That screw is a 6mm hex socket. It looks like this. You'll remove this ideally with an impact gun. If you don't have one that's strong enough and you already know you're going to do rotors, this should be the first screw you remove before removing anything else. That's even before the brake pad sensor, before the brakes and everything. The reason why is because if you don't have a tool or the impact gun strong enough to remove this, the torque on this is only 16mm, but sometimes they're really, really tight, and trying to turn this by hand, all you end up doing is spin the rotor. So while you have either the parking brake on or someone inside depressing on the brake pedal for you, you can come in here with a hand tool and loosen up the nut. But again, this is the very first thing you should do if you are going to replace rotors. If you're not going to, you don't need to do this. Now moving on to the brake pads. This is the part number from BMW for the rear brake pads. You're also going to need the brake pad sensor. This is the part number for the brake pad sensor. These numbers right here, don't worry about those. And you'll notice that you're gonna have a few numbers short of the part numbers, and that is because the first four numbers, 34, 21, are not shown. So you really only need the last 7 here. This 01 right here, don't worry about that. That's just an index number. This right here is the part number. So it'll be 34, 21, 6, 890, 791. Your brake pad kit will come with a new set of shims and new screws. You're also going to get the 4 brake pads. The brake pads, you're going to notice you will have 2 that kind of have this little backing plate right here, and another one right here that is exposed. See that? There's basically a hole and not a hole. The one with the hole goes on the outside, and the one without the hole here goes on the inside. This is also where the brake pad wear sensor is going to clip in. Don't clip it in now though. Wait till the very end once we get it to that point. This is how it's going to look. Same thing with the other one. So you have another pair. You'll have this one goes on the outside, this one on the inside. You're going to get 4 of these and 4 new screws. Now we need to remove the old shims here. You just lever them out with a flathead screwdriver. So now you can take some parts cleaner. You don't need BMW parts cleaner, it could be any kind. And you just want to blow out any of the leftover dust and debris that's in here. Now on the new clips, you're going to find that the inside here has about like a stopper or something like that. So you don't go one way too much to the left or to the right. That's what those are there for. And since you have 4, it doesn't matter which one goes on which side. You can grab whichever one and put it either on the bottom, the top, or left or right. It doesn't matter. And they're not too difficult to line up. Just put them in position and they'll snap right in place. Now when it comes to brake pad paste, sometimes when you buy these at the dealer, they'll give you these little packets for free. You don't need a lot, so 1 packet is good enough. And you're gonna put a very thin layer of this. You're not gonna pack it on and put a big glob. That's wrong, don't do that. It's just a very thin layer. I'm gonna show you how it looks, okay? We're just going to put on the contact points here and up here. Put a very small amount. Okay, you see that? It's a very, very thin layer. So you don't need much. You're gonna do that for both brake pads. And then this brake pad with the hole being covered goes on the inside. The brake pad sensor connector is going to go towards the front of the car. So not like this. This is wrong. It goes like this. You're going to find the slot, slide down, find the top slot, and push in. You can also come in on the back side and make sure that it is seated correctly. So let's move on now to retracting the piston with the electronic parking brake. First thing you want to do is make sure this is nice and clean. So we're going to spray it down with brake cleaner. Now to have the least amount of issues when retracting this piston, you want to get underneath the lip here because there's a lot of dirt little rocks that come in here too. So you want to come under here and clean it as well. Retracts as smoothly as possible. You pull back on the lip again, and you're going to put just a tiny amount of WD-40 in here. This will allow the piston to spin freely and not bind up with the rubber part. We're going to open the hood, go on the driver's side, remove this cover here, which will give us access to the brake fluid level reservoir. Right in there. And what we're trying to look for right here is where the brake fluid level is at. With a small little flashlight, if you point it at the reservoir here, you can get a better look as to how high the level is. This brake fluid level looks to be above the maximum mark. So what's going to happen is, as I push that piston back in, this brake fluid may overfill and spill around this area. To prevent that, grab some shop towels and place it around this area, so anything that does spill out won't go down onto your paint. Now you might be asking, why don't I just suck some of the brake fluid out so that doesn't happen? BMWs have this little strainer right here that is non-removable, so you can't actually go down deep enough to suck out a lot of brake fluid. You're limited to this little pool that you see right here. So what you can do is, if you still want to suck some of it out, you can, as you're retracting the piston, do a little few turns, have someone over here looking to see what's happening with the brake fluid level. And with a turkey baster, as it comes up, you can suck out the brake fluid in this area. And then keep going a little more and a little more until the piston retracts all the way and you don't have anything spilling over. Now, to retract the piston, you're going to need the special tool from BMW. It's going to look like this. It looks like an ordinary piston retractor. The only difference is going to be that the top here has 3 prongs. Normally there's only 2, and see here there's 3 for that to fit into. Do not use anything else other than this tool or an equivalent approved tool. This is from BMW. This is the part number 8332-320-871. You might notice there's a / with the letter A and all that. Don't worry about that. The part number ends in 871. Now, you have to be careful when you order this tool. If you're at the dealer, just tell them you want the entire complete tool, because you can actually get every single part here separately. So this here has its own part number. This little guy right here has its own part number, the shaft and the spline. So if you give them that part number right there, you can tell them, order me the entire tool complete. I don't want any little part, I want the whole thing. You position the tool, and then you're going to turn this until the backing plate touches the end of the caliper. Just like that. Now, a big question you might be asking yourself now is, what about the electronic parking brake? Is it safe to retract this piston with the electronic parking brake? And the answer is yes. Just follow my instructions, do exactly as I do it, you will be fine. This right here is a 10 millimeter. And you're going to retract this slowly. Put pressure here, make sure you're supported, and then just start turning. So if you cleaned everything, as I did, put lube in here, this shouldn't be too difficult. Now at this point, we're gonna stop and take a look at that brake fluid. Looks like we haven't moved. Let's continue. And as you're doing this, you might see how this is getting loose. Just turn it to tighten back up and continue. See, it's getting loose again. That's fine. Just position it, turn this to the left, tighten it back up, continue. And at this point, the electronic parking brake, the piston's going in, but the electronic parking brake, we're not even retracting it yet. You'll feel or you'll hear a difference when we get to that point. Now what's happening right here is this is actually getting tight and I'm not able to turn. So instead of tightening this, I'm going to loosen it. To where I can move it by hand like that and keep going. Okay, so right here I reached the end stop. Now you're gonna notice a difference in the sound, almost like a little motor being retracted. That's the parking brake that you're retracting. And again, this is safe to do. You're not gonna damage it. Just do it how I do it. Just go slowly. And go tight here. And loosen this up again. Okay, right here, I'm feeling some resistance, and this is the end right here. So don't go any further than this. Now you can loosen up this part here. And if you want to make sure, I'm putting just very little effort to push this down, and it's still stuck. It's not stuck. This has just reached the very end. So just don't force it anymore after that. And don't rush off the video just yet. Wait till the very end because there's an actuation process to turn this back on correctly. This is to avoid any brake lights coming on. So now you can grab the caliper completely, swing it down, and fit it into place. And now we can put in the new screws. Start these by hand, catch a few threads. Do the same thing with the bottom one. You may need to move the caliper back and forth a little bit just so the holes line up. Now we can run down the screws. We're just going to bottom them out because we do need to torque them after. Torque spec for the caliper bolts is 35 Newton meters. Now for the brake pad sensor, just reconnect the sensor through all of the holders. Route it the same way that you took it out. Now, when it comes to the brake pad sensor, remember to put the part that sticks out that's going to make contact with the rotor. Make sure you put that towards the rotor. So if you're looking at it, it should look like this when you go in, not like this. The flat side goes towards the pad. The part with the sensor goes towards the rotor. Now let's take a look at the brake fluid level, see where we're at. It looks like it hasn't moved much, so let's proceed with the next side. So I just finished the left side, and when I retracted the piston here and I went to go check the brake fluid, I found that brake fluid was spilling out. So what I did was wrap the top of the cap here with a shop towel, and then I started to retract the piston the rest of the way, and any fluid that did escape from the reservoir was caught by the shop towel. You really want to make sure you wipe off or wash away all the brake fluid, because brake fluid can damage your paint. I'm going to put the wheels back on the vehicle, lower the car off camera, torque them down to 140 Newton meters in a star pattern, and I will return when we are going to re-engage the electronic parking brake. Okay, now that we have the wheels torqued down and everything is reinstalled, we're going to re-engage the parking brake properly. To do that, press the start-stop button 3 times really fast. This is going to wake up the car and ultimately bring us to what is called pad mode. Diagnostic mode active. That is pad mode. So once you have that turned on, you're going to come to the parking brake switch without pressing on the brake pedal. You don't press on the brake pedal yet. We're just going to engage, disengage, engage, disengage, engage, disengage, and then you should be good with that. Now you can turn on the car and depress the brake pedal. And you're gonna press on the brake pedal, make sure it's nice and firm. And then now we're going to go and double check and make sure the brake fluid level is at the correct mark. You're gonna come in and with the flashlight, shine it around the max level mark, which is right here. And then you're going to check to make sure that the brake fluid level is at the maximum mark. If it's low, just top it off to the max mark. Now on the newer BMWs, there's no CBS to reset. All you really need to do is just replace the sensor. You'll notice there's no brake service coming up on the dash for front or rear brakes anymore. Alright, so that's the end of the video. If you learned something, if you liked it, or if I helped you save some money, consider subscribing to the channel. Click right here in the top left corner for more videos on the 2016 BMW 740i. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.